Hello everyone, welcome to Miss Stories. Today on the channel, we will look at the story of how, wanting to help his sick mother, the beggar secretly hung notes on the doors of rich people, and when, in one of the houses, the kid saw an exact copy of his mother. This nice summer day did not start out quite as usual for 6-year-old Yegorka. It was not because he slept badly and could hardly open his eyes in the morning. Last night, Yegorka's mother again felt bad, and the boy had to get up to fix her bed and bring medicine. "Thank you, my little helper. You're the only one I have left," sadly stretched out Irina Viktorovna. "Come on, Mom, I do not have a hard time. The main thing that you as soon as possible to get better," Yegor said, stretching sleepily. The boy knew that now more than ever, his mother needed his help and participation. Of course, Irina Viktorovna tried not to show her despair to her son, and if possible, she held on as best she could. Yegorka never knew his father, and did not want to ask his mother. The boy was used to the fact that they always lived together, and could not even imagine that there was someone else around. Trouble happened to Yegorka's mother 6 months ago. When coming back from the store with a bag of groceries, she slipped on the icy steps that led to the front door of their apartment building. In the fall, the main impact was on her lumbar spine, causing Irina to suffer a compression fracture with a dislocation. Lying on the icy ground, the unfortunate woman desperately tried to get up, not knowing that she would be unable to do so. Passers-by passed by, thinking that the stranger had simply had too much alcohol on the eve of the Christmas holidays. Only 10 minutes after her injury, a compassionate old lady from a neighbor's house called her an ambulance. Despite the fact that on arrival at the trauma unit the doctors did everything possible, their final verdict shocked Irina with its cruelty. "I'm sorry, but you will be in a wheelchair for the next few years. I can't deceive you. Yes, you know what I mean," the attending physician said with a sad sigh, "shortly before I was discharged, so I have no chance of getting back on my feet." Trying to control herself, exclaimed Irina. The doctor looked intently into her eyes and then said, "No, why so categorical? There is always a chance, as well as a way out too. I know for sure that hospitals in Austria, Switzerland or Germany can help you, though they say that there are clinics in Moscow specializing in treatment of such traumas. Unfortunately, such a complicated surgery costs a lot of money, so it is unlikely to be good news for you." Doctor's words had almost magical effect on the hopeless patient. At that moment, Irina was ready to collect at least $1 million just to regain the ability to move as before. But when the woman was discharged home, the realization of the bitter reality gripped her head. It seemed to Irina that life was over and there was no hope for healing. Before that fateful accident, the woman had worked as a waitress in a roadside cafe, and of course she did not have a lot of money. As an orphanage inmate, Irina could hardly count on anyone wanting to help her financially for the operation. The woman had no friends, and even if she had, it is unlikely they would be able to lend such a huge amount. Left alone with his heartache, Irina sat in a wheelchair by the window all day long and watched with despair as passers-by hurry about their business and have no idea that somewhere near, a young woman suffering from intolerable mental and physical pain. All this could not remain unnoticed by her little son Yegorka, for whom in the whole world was the closest and dearest person. It was for this very reason that the little boy decided to help his mother. Yegorka's plan did not withstand any criticism, but by and large, he did not really care. Having decided to raise money for his mother's surgery, the boy began to act the way his heart told him to. It's hard to say what prompted Yegorka to take such a desperate step, but there was no doubt that the decision came from the heart. At first, the boy simply asked passers-by on the street for money, but it didn't take long for Yegor to be a beggar. First, not all of the passers-by were wealthy people, and second, not everyone would agree to give money to a boy who was collecting money for his sick mother with a cardboard sign in his hands. Initially, the sign was written in block letters with a couple of spelling mistakes in the words, the correct spelling of which the boy simply didn't know. The inscription read, "Help good people, whatever you can." Because it didn't say anything about why he needed money, passers-by treated him like any other street kid. Someone threw a handful of change, someone gave him a gingerbread or candy, and some people hissed something vicious about how there were too many beggars nowadays. 6-year-old Yegorka tried not to pay attention to enemies and painstakingly saved money, putting them in a piggy bank. If only the boy knew that in order to have his mother's surgery, he would have to raise several $100,000 of these money-filled piglets. Irina suspected that her son was begging and even reprimanded him for it a couple of times. But as an invalid is not so, it is not easy to keep track of the little boy, who had already managed to feel the freedom and present themselves as the main provider of the family. Irina was well aware that in the eyes of her neighbors and acquaintances, she looked like an irresponsible mother who allowed such behavior on the part of her son. So many times she asked Yegorka to stop begging on the streets and to give up the idea that money could be raised for the operation in such a shameful way. But for the little boy, it seemed almost the only way to help his mother recover and get back on her feet. If everyone in our city or even the country would give just 1 penny, we could raise the necessary amount in a couple of days. Yegorka was lying in bed, dreaming. One day, standing with a cardboard sign outside a store, the boy saw an old janitor standing at a distance, feeding homeless dogs with freshly saved crumbs and bones. Dogs, cats, and even pigeons were circling the old man in the hope of getting their treats. The old man's friends squealed, mewed, and simply purred, and it was clear that this was not the first time he was doing such a procedure. Don't worry, so it's enough for everybody. I've got a little present for everybody. Here's a fresh bone for you, Thunder, and a piece of meat for your friend Sawi. Yes, don't crumble and don't be jealous. He's got no teeth left, so he's entitled to meat, and you are far from it, the old man said with a smile. Watching this scene from a distance, Yegor was so interested in what he saw that he even forgot why he had come to the store today. The boy really loved animals, but to have a kitten or a puppy at home in their unenviable situation would be now an unaffordable luxury. Yegor himself did not notice how he came closer and began to watch with interest the feeding of the street-poor creatures. It was obvious that animals loved their benefactor, and so they wanted to lick his cheek in gratitude or to rub his wet nose in his hand. On seeing the young spectator, the old man waved to him, inviting him to participate in the tidbit distribution. Am I allowed, grandfather? What if they bite? Cautiously asked Yegor. The elderly janitor smiled and, in a hurry to reassure the boy, said, No, they won't bite, baby. They are almost tame. In addition, human kindness is a mile away and will never hurt anyone who comes to them with a good thing. Here, come closer and pet Savoy. He's an old guy, but he's incredibly kind. His master died 2 years ago. Can you imagine? So for about a year, so he waited for him at the door every night. Practically ate nothing. He almost made it, but he got to me just in time. That's the way it is, brother. Yegor looked with interest at the dog, whose fur as if pale silver, and in his eyes shone a spark of reason. The dog understood everything, and if he had been able to speak, would certainly have wished the boy a pleasant day. Overcoming his natural timidity, Yegor came closer and began to help the old man to distribute the gifts. Especially the boy liked to feed the pigeons, which sat on his hand and carefully pecked the breadcrumbs from his small palm. The most interesting thing was that at this moment, the dogs did not touch the cats, and the cats were indifferent to the birds, thus establishing an unspoken truce for the feeding time. It seemed a little Yegor that he had entered a fairy tale, where every animal was not an animal at all, but a human turned by an evil sorceress. Not 10 minutes later, the old man's bag was quickly emptied, and for the homeless animals, everything went back to normal. Dogs began to growl at the cats, and the cats in turn stared at the pigeons, weighed down by the nourishing food. I'm sorry we didn't manage to gather enough food this time, but that's all right. Well, never mind, said an elderly janitor, wiping away a tear. The old man looked at the escaping dogs and cats, smiled, and turned to Yegor standing to his left. Who are you, kid? From an orphanage? Or a homeless soul? Cautiously asked the janitor. No, I live around here. My mom is sick. She needs an operation, and I don't have any money, so I decided to try to collect it this way, Yegorka hastened to answer. After the boy's words, the old man frowned and his forehead had a network of deep wrinkles. Yes, it's not good. Disease is not a joke, brother. Your mother has a speedy recovery, but it is unlikely that you can gather the necessary amount of money on the street. Of course, I'll give you 100 or so for my pension, but it's not likely to help the cause. By the way, my name is Trofim Michaelich. You're welcome. I live nearby, in the basement, anyway. I have a restroom and a toolkit there, added the janitor. Thank you, Grandpa, and I am Yegorka, but he can only call me that to my mother, and for the others I am Yegor, and in no other way, the boy said in a mature manner. The old man nodded understandingly and hid a smile in the folds of his white beard. Good, Yegor. I'll know, and you would do well to rewrite the sign. Firstly, it's written with mistakes, and secondly, you should specify the aims. Like, you're collecting money for a reason, aren't you? Here, for my mom's surgery, write it down. You want me to write you a petition on paper. All you have to do is write it down, and that's it. So how about it? Okay, the old man asked. All right, Grandpa, the boy exclaimed happily. Then Yegor got a little embarrassed, as if he was gathering his courage to ask the old man an awkward question. Trofim Michaelich, you're homeless, aren't you? Well, that you live in the basement and all that, the boy asked as gently as possible. The elderly janitor smiled again, and again admired the boy's ingenuity. No, Yegorka, I'm not a bum. It's just the way things turned out. You're not standing there with your hands outstretched. I can't call you a beggar. Well, I don't feel like a bum either. My son died 3 years ago, and my daughter-in-law, a snake in the throat, grieved for a while, then kicked me out of the apartment. I'm not adapted to the life of a vagrant, so I became a janitor in exchange for the fact that I can equip the basement for their own needs. I was a janitor in exchange for my own needs, Trofim Michaelich said. Only now Yegor realized that because of his own carelessness, he had almost offended a good man. Meanwhile, an elderly janitor wrote the boy a template for his new inscription and handed it to him. After reading it spontaneously, Yegor immediately expressed his joy at such a literate phrase. Old man Michaelich had written everything so thoroughly that any passerby would understand what exactly the boy needed the money for. Just be careful, okay? If anything, run to me. I'm right here. Today was my retirement day, so I gave my pets a treat, and there's nothing left, but I'll share with you anyway, said the old man and deftly slipped a crispy new bill into Yegor's pocket. Thank you very much, Grandfather Trofim. If all people were like you, no one would be sick, said Yegorka, sniffing his nose. The boy chatted with the janitor for a while and then ran home to his mother. Yegor tried not to be outside for too long, so that his mother would not be too sad and would not feel anxious. After meeting Trofim Michaelich, the boy once again believed in a miracle and the victory of good over evil, something he had heard so many times from the heroes of national cartoons. On way home, all Yegor could think about was how he was going to write his appeal on a piece of cardboard, and from then on, he would only raise money for his sick mother. Passing the bus stop, the boy stopped his gaze for a moment at one of its side walls and froze in place. The wall was covered with advertisements for buying and selling, providing services, and other advertising and entertainment nonsense. Yegor thought for a moment of a piece of paper with text written by an elderly janitor in their place, and he smiled enigmatically. A thought that had been hovering in the boy's mind and could not find its way out now took clear shape and became the most important goal for him.